Dr. Billy Cohn, it's great to
Okay.
have you on the MedTech Unboxed podcast. I don't know if you remember, but it was about 5, 6 years ago, and I was at MD&M West, and I got a text message from a good buddy of mine, Colin Sutherland, who I know you know. And you guys
Yeah, I
were
know
hanging
Colin,
out in
sure.
the Hilton bar, and he's like, you got to come over here and meet this guy. And so you had your phone and you were talking. Yes,
Was I doing
yes,
magic tricks?
yeah,
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 okay. I
yes,
probably had a
and
deck of
talking about med
cards or,
tech and then I'm like texting my friends, hey, you got to come over and see this guy. And before you know it, there was a big crowd, and then we met with you at the Texas Medical Center at J&J, and you gave a talk first, and then we had a meeting. But that talk you gave really resonated with me. I remember a lot about it. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you talked a little bit about the story behind Dr. Tom Fogarty and how he invented the
oh yeah.
embolectomy catheter and putting the tip of a latex glove onto the end of the tube. And you say, hey, why don't we just deliver this down the artery and inflate it and pull the clots out? And all these hotshot docs are like, that'll never work. And that became correct me if I'm wrong here, the founding product for Edwards Life Sciences, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, one of them. Yeah, absolutely. And it's been used in 25 million cases and saved
Yeah.
countless lives and limbs. And he was a medical student. He was 26 years old when he did that. And Jack Cranley, who Tom's father died when he was young. Jack Cranley took Tom under his wing and sort of was like a father to him. And he was a vascular surgeon at University of Cincinnati and just a very brilliant guy. He actually paid for Tom Fogarty's college tuition to put him through Xavier. But when he showed it to Jack Cranley after watching a traditional embolectomy back then, they would make big cuts up and down the leg, clamp the artery, open it up, try to pick the embolus out with forceps. And the patient tragically survived, but tragically lost his leg. And so Tom put together this prototype, brought it in, showed Jack Cranley. Jack Cranley did a couple animals and then did 3 successful patients in a row and presented it at Grand Rounds at University of Cincinnati. And like you said, all the wise gray-haired doctors, William Altemeyer was the chief surgeon, was in the audience, and he'd been the president of the American College of Surgeons. And Jack Cranley presented their 3 patients, and then William Altemeyer, and he credited it to young Tom Fogarty, who was a medical student at the time. And William Altemeyer rose and said, well, only someone as junior as a medical student would know all the reasons why this won't work. He was congratulatory. He said it kindly, but that's always the challenge that innovators face, is when you're doing something new that challenges long and deeply held beliefs.
Yeah.
It takes some time. And effort.
You have, I think, 230 patents or more, right? And that's a lot of time and effort and grit, but a lot of creativity, right? And you talked about early on how you'd go to Home Depot and get some tubing and some samples and make some mock-ups. Now we have like the Amazon Primes of the world and Chamfer. And I remember walking through Texas Medical Center, the J&J, and all the beautiful 3D printing. Yeah.
Look at this machine shop behind me. I've got this huge machine shop now with brilliant machinists. But although when we built this place, and when I said that I was going to take this job running CDI, which by the way is no longer a Johnson & Johnson facility, it's now the Texas Medical Center's Center for Device Innovation, and I still run it as the token figurehead. But I really sort of realized, wait a second, I've been a heart surgeon my whole life. I'm going to stop taking call. And I got sort of depressed about my prospects and whether I could succeed at this. And my wife and children were, psychotherapists and counselors saying, Dad, just do what you've always been doing over the last 20 years. And I found a song by the White Stripes. You know who the White Stripes are? And they have a song called Little Room. And it's when you're sitting in your little room and you're working on something good. When you're sitting in your little room and you're working on something good, and if it's really good, you might need a bigger room. And when you're sitting in your bigger room, you might not know what to do. You might have to think about how you got started sitting in your little room. And the idea is that there is something super empowering about sitting in a garage with your sheepdog working on something late at night. And when you put a bunch of resources on something, you can you can frequently paralyze that. You can extinguish that little spark. And that's what I encourage people to do. Even if you have a big machine shop, sometimes duct tape, band ties, a glue gun, Home Depot, if you start there, the threshold, the energy it takes to get started is so low.
Yeah.
Just do something. And as you do it, you'll have the 5 things that occur to you while you're putting it together of what you should have done. Then the next time you do those, and 6 more things will occur, and it evolves in your hand. And it's not just a way to demonstrate the inventive process, it's part of the inventive process. Because as it takes form, you'll go, well, wait a second, I didn't need 2 of these. Why don't I have just 1? Or I didn't need a hinge. You can just bend.
Yeah.
And these are just, 50,000, but it's part of the inventive process. And then it gives you something to show an engineer, to show a machinist, and they'll have ideas. I really think invention is a team sport, and it takes a cheerleader. And that's one of the things that you, as the person who comes up with the idea, have to do. You have to be a cheerleader. And that first crude prototype, after iterating enough times over a couple weeks, maybe, that you're not embarrassed to show it to people, that's your palm pump. In fact, check this out. Oh, I had it in my pocket a second ago. I guess I put it down. But one of the residents came in and said, hey, when we're putting a chest tube in, we go over the rib with the clamp and we pop it in and we find it with our finger, and then finding it with the chest tube in a clamp is sometimes hard. So I said, oh, well, and he came up with the idea of having a clamp that would Seldinger. It would go over a guide wire, one of the jaws. So he brought a clamp over. We heated it up, hammered it flat, put it on the mill, made a groove in it, laser welded a hypo tube in, built it, bent it back and put it together. And I just finished. He was just here. He just had to go see a patient. But as inelegant as it may sound, now we have something to show people that they'll go, oh, that's the genesis of an idea evolving to a inelegant but demonstrative prototype that can maybe start an avalanche. And every avalanche starts with a little pebble. A crude prototype from Home Depot or Amazon or anywhere, done in your garage after a glass of whiskey.
Yeah.
Maybe
Like you said, you just got to do something, right, to start it. Yeah. Excellent. Thank you so much for that. Let's talk about BiVACOR. Real exciting. I know this is an area that you've been passionate about practically all your life, right? And if you can kind of walk us through the journey of BiVACOR, and I think you have a sample there. Maybe you could just walk. Yeah.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I have a BiVACOR heart right here. So you're right. This is something that's super meaningful to me. I was 8 years old when Denton Cooley implanted the artificial heart that Michael DeBakey had been working on while DeBakey was out of town. April 4th, 1969. It was on the front page of both the Houston Chronicle and the Houston Post. We had 2 newspapers back then. And my mom cut out the article and put it by my breakfast bowl, and I took it to school. I mean, I've been really curious about and totally inspired by the search for an artificial heart. And over the next 70 years, a lot of artificial heart efforts came and went. Brilliant doctors, brilliant engineers, brilliant surgeons, brilliant scientists, but none of them have been able to provide what we really need, a durable mechanical replacement for the failing human heart. 130,000 Americans die every year of heart failure. We can transplant 3,000 to 4,000 of them because that's the extent of our donor pool. And they're always in the middle of the night and involve a Learjet and 2 operative teams. If we had a durable artificial heart to take off the shelf, it would be really impactful. Tragically, though, over the last 7 years, all the artificial hearts that we've made emulate the human heart. They fill and eject, fill and eject. The heart's 2 pumps. There'd be 2 pumps using compressed air or silicon oil shuttling back and forth or pusher plates. Whatever you do, 100 beats a minute is 144,000 beats every day. It's 52 million beats in a year. No one's been able to make one that lasts more than a year. In fact, some of them capriciously fail after months. And so we put them in gravely ill patients just to get them to survive long enough to find a donor heart and do a transplant, which is fine, but wouldn't it be great if we had something better? Well, we saw in the assist pumps, the left ventricular assist pumps, where you wouldn't take the heart out and replace it. You'd leave the diseased heart in place, but have a pump next to it to assist it. And those originally beat 100 times a minute until Rich Wampler and Rob Jarvik independently came up with the idea of a rapidly spinning turbine. And the world stood in line to slap them in the face and say, you can't pump blood with a turbine. It'll break the blood cells. You need a pulse, et cetera, et cetera. Well, Bud Frazier, my friend, mentor, and partner, was the only guy who said, well, maybe there is merit in this. And he started working with both of them. And that gave rise to the rapidly spinning assist pumps. And Dick Cheney famously had one. But Bud Frazier's lab was devoted to developing those. He put in more of them than anybody in the world. He and I started working on a twin turbine artificial heart. That's one of the reasons I left Boston and came back to the Texas Heart Institute. And we did 68 animals with our twin turbines, and the adapters were made out of drywall tape from Home Depot and bath and tile caulk from Home Depot and Dacron from the fabric store. And we got so we could do it fairly successfully over and over again. And then we said, well, we can't sew these materials into a human. So we started making them out of hernia mesh, NuSil, medical silicone, and barred cardiovascular patches. So everything and then two HeartMate 2 turbines. HeartMate 2 got approved in 2010. It was the first approved rapidly spinning assist pump in the United States. And with that, we made a continuous flow total artificial heart where everything in the heart was approved for use in humans, albeit not in that configuration. After doing a couple animals with that, we put it in a gravely ill patient, and tragically, he died after 5 weeks, but the heart worked great. He had end-stage liver failure and was on dialysis and trached when we put the device in. But anyway, based on that, we got to meet this young man, Daniel Timms, who also was working on a continuous flow artificial heart. He, independent of us, didn't know about us, we didn't know about him. But when we had this big success and started talking about it around the country, he came on his own dime and showed us his concept. He'd never done a successful animal experiment, but had done some flow loop work and actually had hooked one up to an animal with tubes, didn't actually implant it in the chest. And Bud Frazier and I realized, oh my God, this is so brilliant. And we got him in a headlock and said, you're not leaving Houston. He said he could bring his whole team to Houston for 18 months if we could come up with $2.5 million. I knocked on one door, a grateful patient, Mattress Mac, wrote us a check. We brought them, and that was in 2012. Our implant was in 2011, 2012. We brought them here, did our first successful animal in 2013, 50 animals, 50 chronic animals and 50 acute animals later. We submit all the data to the FDA. In November of 2023, we got the nod to do a 5-patient EFS in the United States. We started enrolling in July of 2024. We did one a month for the next 5 months. That's how long it takes us to make one of these pumps. All the patients were gravely ill, on their deathbed, with impellas in place and going into right heart failure and multi-system organ decline. We took them to the OR. We thought, well, hopefully some of these will survive long enough that we can list them for transplant. To our amazement, because of the flow this thing produces, and it'll produce, I've seen it in a cow with a cardiac output of 20 liters a minute on a treadmill. These patients would be up walking in the halls in 2 or 3 days on room air by the end of the week and get relisted. So some of the patients only had the device. One patient only had the device for 6 days, but one of them had it for 27 days. All the patients did well. They've all been transplanted. They're all home with their families. Based on that wild success, we submitted that data to the FDA to get permission for more patients. They've subsequently come back and said we can do 15 more in the United States. But while they were pining on that, we went to St. Vincent's in Sydney, Australia, and planted one in a gravely ill patient, Chris Hayward, and the surgeon was Paul Jantz, brilliant surgeon. And the operation went great. And that patient was able to transfer out of the ICU after a couple weeks, the step-down unit to the floor, and then home. And he went home with the BiVACOR heart in his chest, changing his own batteries, required almost no care. We never reset the speed. He went to the grocery store and took showers and washed his car, et cetera, et cetera. After 104 days, They found a suitable donor. It takes longer in Australia. And on day 105, he had a transplant. He had some problems with afterload, and actually they had to leave his chest open and ECMO for a couple days. Not related to BiVACOR. The BiVACOR is out, but now he's extubated, chest closed, walking in the halls. He's going to do fine.
Yeah,
but this was
because
just
we were supposed to do this, run this podcast, and we had to reschedule it because you had to go there, I believe. So, yeah,
we went to Australia for exactly, and we just had a big press conference there, which generated a lot of lay press, and then went to Melbourne to train the surgeons at the Alfred because they're going to do the next one, which unfortunately coincided with the Melbourne Australian Grand Prix, so we had to sit through that.
Yeah, somebody has to do it.
Yeah. So this is the device. You have an animation showing how it works, right? Because that's the secret sauce. No more beating chambers, no more flexible membranes, no more synthetic valves. This device has one moving part. It's about the size of an Oreo cookie. It's that yellow thing. And on one side, see those fingers sticking up? That's going to be your right heart. That's going to take the venous blood from your arms to your legs, your brain, your internal organs, pump it to the lungs through that cannula sticking sort of down in the center of the picture. The blood's going to go through the lungs and come back to that cannula on the right that's sort of pointed at us. Oh, beautiful. And it's going to hit that flat pinwheel on that spinning structure and get pumped out that cannula that tube that's sticking sort of at a slant down towards the left lower corner of the image. And that's a systemic pump. And so one moving part, if you look at that little thing of 12 brownish things sticking up way on the far right there. That's a brushless DC motor that works with 10 magnets right underneath the pinwheel surface of the rotor. That's what makes it spin, just like every brushless DC motor. And brushless DC motors have advanced so much in the last 2 decades, and we're leveraging all those advances. And then the 3 magnets over on the other side, can you show those? Right. Those are the ones that are adjusting thousands of times a second to keep that yellow piece floating in space so it's not touching anything. And part of the brilliance of this was Daniel Tim's PhD thesis, where he came up with virtual zero power. So there's a place where that rotor can sit and spin where the right atrial force and the left atrial force and the pull of the magnet and the pull of those 3 electromagnets when they're turned off, when they're not energized. Every magnet is a piece of iron. It's suballoy here, but it's ferromagnetic material with a wire wrapped around it. When you put current through the wire, it becomes a magnet. Well, when you don't put current through the magnet, through the wire, it's just a piece of iron. On the little yellow Oreo cookie, rotate it a little bit. Let's look at the face of it. Anyway, around that, that's okay. Right around that assemblage of fingers are 2 ring magnets. Those ring magnets are attracted to those 3 pieces of metal, even when you don't energize the magnets. So there's a place where you can put the rotor. I'm talking about its left-right position, and it only moves a fraction of a millimeter. But there's a place where you can put it where the magnets in the spinning member, the yellow impeller, where the attraction of it to those 3 pieces of iron just balances the pull of the motor on the impeller to the other side. But it's a very precious balance. That's okay. We're going to chew it up several thousand times a second. So the amount of power we're putting through those 3 electromagnets is nominal. It's almost nothing. We know where the rotor is because next to each magnet, see those little silver cylinders? Those are eddy current sensors. Several thousand times, in fact, 20,000 times a second. It pings out an electromagnetic signal, which goes through the case because the case is made out of alloy. It doesn't set up good eddy current, but then hits the impeller. The impeller is pure titanium, makes eddy currents, which broadcast their own signal, which it picks up. So we know to within microns what the spacing is at 3 different places. So we can energize those electromagnets to make sure it's spinning flat and to adjust its position. The cool thing is remember, we also have right atrial pressure pushing on this side of it and left atrial pressure pushing on that side of it. that's another thing you have to take into consideration, but it helps us. So if your pump is spinning and you're doing fine and you're sitting there watching Planet of the Apes marathon and you are eating a Cool Ranch Dorito and it goes down the wrong way and you start coughing, like I'm doing a lot today, suddenly the resistance of flow through your lungs goes up. The right pump is no longer doing as good of a job. The right atrial pressure starts to go up. And that's going to push that impeller to the left towards the motor, and it's going to fall into a magnetic well. We don't want that to happen. So instantly, we energize these 3 electromagnets a little more, pulling the impeller over towards those 3 electromagnets, where the magnets, the magnetic rings in the impeller are now closer to those 3 pieces of metal, so it can overcome the fact that the right atrial pressure is higher, which also, by moving the left rotor away from that face, made it less efficient, which is what you want to happen when your pulmonary vascular resistance goes up. So this thing is constantly monitoring the left and right pump efficiencies by upregulating or downregulating the left pump, basically, in a mechanism that is so brilliant. It was Daniel Tim's PhD thesis. It's the script for how do you make an artificial heart: magnetic levitation, autonomous balancing of left and right, and autonomous. One of the questions everybody asks is, well, if you exercise, how does this increase its flow? And is it okay not to have a pulse? Well, we think it is okay not to have a pulse, but for a variety of reasons, we think having a pulse will be slightly better. So our impeller, we rotate it fast and slow, fast and slow, fast and slow. We increase the rotational speed once a second by 900 RPM. That gives us a 40 millimeter pulse pressure. It gives us an upslope on the arterial waveform, the change in pressure with respect to time, dPdt, that's very similar to yours and mine. And it gives you a palpable pulse at the wrist. And it makes it so you can go to Walgreens and put a blood pressure cup on your arm, find out what your blood pressure is. It's also probably better for washing out the pump, all that chaos. And with the spinning LVADs, we had some patients whose hearts were so bad that all the flow was going through the LVAD. If they had like a 60% carotid stenosis, the washout beyond an arterial narrowing isn't as good with a diminished pulse. We did see some cold legs and some strokes related to that early in our experience with HeartMate 2. By cycling this, we hope to mitigate that.
Excellent. That's great. Thanks for going through that. That's fascinating. And you talked to, it's amazing.
Cool technology, right?
And you talked about some of you already just Australia, some of the clinical results. So I guess we don't need to go through that unless there's anything else there to discuss.
No, the cool thing though, is we've had some of the patients, some of the US patients whose glomerular filtration rate, the measure of how well the kidneys are doing, is in the 40s. So much so that they had them seen by the dialysis docs to see if they needed a kidney transplant. And historically, when you operate on these patients, you plan on several months of dialysis afterwards and hope the kidneys come back. This thing produces so much flow and it's such a low venous pressure that patient's glomerular filtration rate, GFR, was 105 within a day. So we think organ failure, which heretofore previously has been something we're really worried about, and we're still worried about it, but we think this BiVACOR, the incredible flow it generates and the low filling pressures, maybe this is going to change that paradigm. We'll see. So we had a couple patients. We had a patient whose lungs were widening out from heart failure. We put the device in, let the flow go to 11 liters a minute, let the left atrial pressure go to 3, and within 6 hours, the chest x-ray was clear. So this is something we've never seen before. There may be challenges with this technology that we haven't disclosed now, that we haven't figured out yet after only 6 patients. But right now, it's looking pretty amazing. The driveline is still a big liability because you have a computer outside the body that's giving instructions to the maglev and running the pump. But we know that you can miniaturize those things and put them actually inside this can. I mean, with this iWatch, the modern era, what we can do, and we've hired those people, and they're doing that right now. HeartMate 3, which is the leading LVAD that Abbott produces, several 3,000 of them implanted a year. All of its electronics and computers are inside. We're going to do the same. So the only thing that'll be coming through this wire is DC power. Once we get to that point, we'll get rid of this drive line altogether and implant a coil under the skin. You'll wear a vest with a coil. It'll be inductive coupling, the same technology used to charge your phone wireless. And so all that's mapped out. We figured out how much it's going to cost to do. We're hiring the people that are going to do it. It's a grail quest. And we're
I think the miniaturization of MedTech is there, and you'll be able to modernize that. And there's so much work done in neurostim and things to miniaturize these things.
Absolutely. And battery technology follows Moore's law. It's a punctuated equilibrium, but with new insights, just like computing. Moore's law. Do you know Moore's law? It says that every 18 months it gets half as big, twice as powerful, costs half as much.
No.
Do you know Cole's law? It's ground up calf, pepper's made with fried chicken.
Awesome. Thanks for that update. Super exciting.
For the easy whack.
So besides BiVACOR and TAH, what else gets you kind of excited about cardiovascular MedTech?
Well, I'm glad you asked. I have another company that you can go on and look at the website called Obvius Robotics. And Obvious Robotics is going to democratize needle access to structures inside the body. In fact, I have one right over here. Can I walk over it? Hang on. This is a handheld robot that has an ultrasound probe built into it. It has a motor-driven vibration coil. So the idea is you put a sterile drape on it, and the sterile drape has this component on it that magnetically locks here. You put this needle, which is sterile, and outside the sterile drape, through that, and it magnetically docks to this. You unlock the aiming reticle, the aiming arm, and on ultrasound, it Bluetooths a little aiming crosshairs like an old World War I machine gun. And you put that on the structure you want to hit, and the device calculates, I need to advance the needle 31.4 millimeters. Once you lock it and have your target in view, you push this one button, and the needle goes right to that point. The it's vibrating 140 times a second, like a mosquito does with its proboscis to reduce force. So hollow structures don't collapse, things don't move around, the needle doesn't bend, and you can unerringly put a needle exactly where you want, even with no training or skill. And our first target, if you will, is venous access, because it's done 7 million times a year. There you go. And that's what the target looks like when it's on a vessel. And you can take someone who's never started a central line, and they can get it one shot every time. And there's actually a video of me doing a patient in Paraguay.
That's it. Oh, that's it. Oh, perfect.
There you go.
Yeah.
Can we put that on this? Oh boy, the team's gonna be so delighted that I'm doing this. Wait, it's not playing. It's frozen somehow. When you drag the cursor, we can see the video above the timeline, but it's not playing.
There we go now.
Oh, there we go. So there I put the crosshairs on the vein and locked it. It turns green when you're ready to fire. That's the patient's jugular vein. Steps to the left, feet to the right. I'm watching on that tablet. It's on a stand. I push the button, and it goes 140 times a second. There's the tip of the needle. You don't have to put the needle you don't have to put the ultrasound down while you're advancing your guide wire. It's going to totally disrupt that whole field. And that's how long it takes. That's unedited. It makes it so. And we had 4 new users, 2 of which were medical students that had never started a line, and they got first time in human patients. We did 19 lines in 2 days. And so now we just got breakthrough designation by the FDA. We're now raising money like every med tech thing is. We're raising money all the time, but we're going to do we've met with the FDA several times, and they've given us what we need to do, what we need to show to get clearance for central lines. And that's the tip of the iceberg. We think it's going to be all over the body for microwave ablation, for biopsies, for new procedure development using intraluminal robotics and transorganic robotics.
Wow, I'm glad. That's a bonus to this podcast to talk about that. That's so good. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thanks for letting me wait. To maintain academic integrity, I'm severely compromised.
Yeah.
Well, like Tom Fogarty said, about conflict of interest. He says, if there's no conflict, there's no interest.
Dr. Billy, this has been really fun. It was great catching up with you again. It's probably been a few years, and I'm probably going to reach out to you maybe in 6 months again for an update on all these things. All right.
Killer. My wife got me a t-shirt that says, help, I'm talking and I can't shut up.
All right. Thanks again, Billy. Appreciate it. All right. All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Great fun.